The dusty wind howled across the empty plains as the sun sank low behind the jagged ridges of the Sierra Nevada. The last sliver of gold light glinted off the ranch house windows, and Luke Marston stood at the fence line, jaw clenched, eyes shadowed beneath the brim of his hat. He had spent 12 years building this land, every post and gate carved from sweat and stubborn pride. Yet tonight, none of it mattered, because she was leaving. Clara Dawson sat on her horse near the corral, her travel bag slung over the saddle. The wind tugged at her long auburn hair as she stared at him with eyes that once held warmth, now hard as river stones. "Luke," she said softly, "I told you I won't live my life chained to your land, your silence, or your pride. I'd rather die than be yours." The words hit him like a bullet. For a moment, Luke didn't breathe. The ranch around them, the creaking windmill, the distant low of cattle, the scent of dry sage, faded into a dull, hollow ache. He wanted to shout, to beg, to grab her hand and never let her go. But that wasn't the kind of man Luke Marston was. He had built walls around his heart as thick as the canyon rock. "You think I'm the villain," he said quietly, his voice rough. "But I never asked you to stay here, Clara. You came on your own." She shook her head, tears glimmering in the fading light. "I came for the man I thought you were. Not the one who hides from his own heart." Her horse shifted restlessly, sensing her pain. Luke took a step forward, then stopped himself. Every instinct in him wanted to reach out, to touch her, to stop her from disappearing into that lonely horizon. But he froze. His fingers curled into fists at his sides. "You walk away now," he said, forcing each word past the weight in his chest. "You don't come back. Not to me, not to this land." Clara stared at him, trembling. For a heartbeat, it seemed like she might dismount, that she might give him one last chance. But then she turned her horse toward the open plain. "Goodbye, Luke." Her voice broke on the wind. He watched her silhouette ride away, small, fragile, and fading into the red dusk. When she disappeared behind the ridges, he stood alone, unable to move. That night, a storm rolled over the valley. Lightning cracked across the sky, echoing the fury inside him. In the flicker of light, Luke saddled his horse and rode into the storm, the thunder drowning out every thought except one: he would not let her vanish into the night. He didn't know what he would do when he found her. Beg her forgiveness, force her to listen, or something darker, something even he didn't understand yet. All he knew was that he couldn't let those words be the last thing she ever said to him. The storm had broken into a cold drizzle by the time Luke found her. The rain slicked the plains in silver, thunder rumbling far off as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Clara had sought shelter beneath a rocky outcrop, her horse tied nearby, its flanks trembling from exhaustion. She turned sharply at the sound of approaching hoofs, and froze when she saw him. "Luke," she whispered, her voice a mixture of shock and weariness. "You shouldn't have come." He dismounted slowly, his hat dripping water, his eyes dark and unreadable in the gloom. "You left me no choice." She frowned, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "There's always a choice. You made yours. The ranch, your pride, your silence. Let me go." For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the patter of rain on the rocks and the restless stamping of the horses. Luke stepped closer, his boots sinking in the wet earth. "You think I don't care," he said quietly. "You think I never did. But every sunrise on that ranch, every mile I rode to keep it alive, it was all for you." Clara shook her head, her eyes glistening with tears. "Don't say that. You can't buy love with sweat and fences, Luke. You can't fix what's already broken. He stared at her, his expression tightening as if each word was a lash across his soul. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face, the face of a man who'd fought the world and somehow lost everything anyway. I don't want to own you, he said hoarsely. I just don't know how to let you go. Clara's resolve wavered for a heartbeat. She saw in him not the hard rancher she'd fled from, but the man she'd once danced with beneath the stars, laughing as fireflies flickered around them. For an instant, her heart trembled toward forgiveness. But then, she remembered the long, cold nights waiting for words he'd never spoken. You should learn, she whispered. Because love that cages isn't love at all. Luke took another step, rain running down his face like tears. He wanted to pull her into his arms, to tell her she was wrong, that he could change. But before he could speak, a gunshot echoed through the storm. They both froze. The echo rolled across the valley like thunder. In the distance, a rider galloped hard toward them, one of McCall's men. Luke realized, the rustler gang who'd been trailing Clara since she'd fled town. Without thinking, Luke drew his revolver. Get behind me, he barked. Clara obeyed, fear flashing in her eyes. The rider fired again, the bullet tearing through Luke's shoulder. He staggered but stayed standing, firing once, twice, until the rider slumped from his horse. When silence returned, Luke fell to one knee, clutching his wound. Clara rushed to him, pressing her hands to the blood. Why, she cried, you could have let me go. He looked up at her, pain etched into every line of his face. I couldn't, not if it meant you wouldn't live to hate me. Tears mixed with rain as she held him close. For the first time, Luke smiled, faint, broken, but real. And in that wild, weeping storm, she finally understood. He hadn't come to claim her back. He'd come to save her, even if it cost him everything.